this movie, we're going to look at stairs. Stairs come in two varieties here. We have a component-based stair and we have the traditional sketch-based stair. In this movie, I'm going to focus on the traditional sketch-based stair. I'm in a file here called Sketch Stairs, and I'm in the level 2 floor plan. And I'm going to work down in the lobby in the lower portion of the plan. So I'm going to zoom in right here on this area of the plan right here. It's labeled Stair A. Now, if we go to the Architecture tab, we'll find the Stair tool. And if you click the little drop down, you can see the two types that I just mentioned, Stair by Component and Stair by Sketch. So in this case, we're going to choose our Stair by Sketch, and that will take me into our traditional sketch mode. There's a few things we want to do before we start clicking points in the stair sketch. The first thing is there are a couple draw modes like we've had in other sketch modes. We've got Run, Boundary, and Riser. Now, Run is by far the easiest mode because it will actually create all the pieces that are required in the sketch with just a few clicks. So you typically want to try and use Run wherever you can. If you look at the tooltip that's appeared on my screen there, you can see that the sketch will come in 3 colors. You'll have a green color, which represents the boundary lines, the outline of the stair, and you're going to have an outline on either side. You'll have a blue line, which runs down the middle of the stair, and that just represents the path of the stair. And then finally, you'll have some black lines, which represent the riser lines. So I want to make sure Run is chosen. Next, I want to look over here on my Properties palette and verify that the settings here are correct in what I expect. So I'm going to start at level 2 because I'm in the level 2 floor plan. And I want the stair to go up to level 3. So those two settings are fine. That will determine for me how many risers Revit needs to create. So because I'm going up to those 2 floors, it does the math. It bases that math on the maximum riser height. And you can see that right here, the actual riser height is just shy of 7 inches. Well, if we were to click Edit Type, you can see here that the type for the stair is 7-inch max, 11-inch straight. If we were to click Edit Type, so if I cancel out of here, it's just simply doing the math and trying to get me as close to 7 inches as it can, and it came up with a number of risers of 18. Now you can actually modify that number if you needed to, but you can't modify to a point that makes the riser taller than 7 inches. If you do, Revit will generate an error message. Now I have a width parameter right here as well. I'm going to change that to 4 feet. You can change it later, but it's usually easier if you remember to do it first because then the size of the stair is a little bit easier to control. So I've got that. And then I don't try and get my stair in exactly the right spot first try. What I usually do is I click nearby and just kind of build it nearby, and then I'll move it into place. I find that a little bit easier. Now I'm going to start moving my mouse down, and I want you to look very carefully at the little message that appears directly below my cursor. So you can see that the message currently says 9 risers created, 9 remaining. You want to pay attention to that message because that's letting you know basically when you need to click. So what I'm going to do right now is click my mouse, and that creates the first run of stairs. Now, you can create as many runs in your stair as you need. So each time you create a run, what will happen is when you create the next run, Revit will create a landing automatically for you to join the 2 runs together. So when you're using this tool, you're just drawing the run. You do not draw the landings. Revit takes care of the landings. Let me show you. I'm going to move my mouse over here and keep it lined up with that one. Click, pull it straight up until it says 0 remaining, and then I'll click again. So you just draw the runs. You do that with a few clicks, and Revit sort of fills in the details. Now, once we have that, we can take this entire sketch, and I'm just going to put a window around the whole thing. We can use our standard modification tools like the Move tool, and I'm going to move from this endpoint, and I'm going to snap it right to that endpoint, and that gets it positioned at the correct starting point. Next, what I'm going to do is select only this half of the stair, because you see this nice little gap over here to the wall? I want to match that same amount over here. Now, I could do another move command, but I'd have to know how far to move it. And since I eyeballed my clicks, I don't really know what that is. But if you recall in a previous movie, we talked about this really handy tool right over here called Activate Dimensions. So make sure that you have just the right-hand side of the stair selected. You click on Activate Dimensions. That will give you a series of temporary dimensions in very useful locations like this one right here. And I can simply type in 4 inches there. and that will move just that run of the stair over so that it's 4 inches off of the inside wall. If you want to make any additional modifications, like selecting this sketch line, for example, and maybe dragging this witness line group to here, and I could say instead of a 4-foot landing, I want to have a 5-foot landing. It's really up to you. So the last thing I want to do before I finish this sketch is over here on the ribbon, I want to click this railing button. And what this does is Revit creates railings automatically on the stair for me on both sides. Now, if I want to, I can actually change what railing it's going to use. So if I wanted a particular type of guardrail or handrail or something like that. So in this case, I'm going to just choose a guardrail pipe, and I'm going to assign it to the stringers, and then I'm going to click OK. And then finally, I come over here and I click Finish Edit Mode. I see the stair is to come down through the sections, open up section 1, zoom in, and you can see our stair going up between levels 2 and 3. Now, if we look at level 1, we obviously need a stair down there. So I'm going to scroll over here to my level 1 floor plan. I might be able to get away with just a straight run stair over here. That's a lot simpler to create than a switchback stair because it's really just 2 clicks. I'm going to do this one also with the stair by sketch, but I just want to point out that you could easily do this with stair by component as well. Let's do stair by sketch. I want to verify all my settings again. You can see it remembered all the same settings. I'll start right about here, and I'll pull it all the way to the end. So the only thing we do differently this time is we use up all of the risers in a single sketch, select everything, activate the dimensions, make that 4 inches, deselect, check my railing, it's still guardrail pipe, and I'll click Finish. Let's reopen our section, and there's our result. To make it match up, but those are fine-tuning results that you can fiddle with on your own. So sketch-based stairs use the same sketch-based methodology that we've looked at in other movies like floors and roofs and so on. You sketch the overall runs of the stairs, and then from that sketch, Revit creates the 3-dimensional stair. Railings usually are created automatically when you create stairs, so that's usually the most common way to work with them. But you can also create railings yourself. So I'm here in a file called railings, and I'm going to zoom in on this area of the plan right here. And I have this open to below space, and the stair comes up to this little balcony here and walks around. So obviously we would need some sort of a guardrail or operation. What we'll do is we'll go to the Architecture tab, and we'll click on the railing tool. Now all you have to do is click the default tool, but if you open up the drop down, it's the sketch path that we're going to use here for our guardrail. And this takes me to sketch mode, and we can draw railings in really any shape we want. The one thing that's a little different about this sketch than some of the others that we've seen is you can either draw an open or a closed path here. In this case, we want an open path because we just need to do an L-shaped railing along this balcony. But if you were doing an enclosed space, you can do the railing all the way around as well. Now, we could draw with any of these other tools, but what I want to show you here is the pick lines option, because this will make it a lot easier to create our sketch. So I'm going to choose pick lines, and I can pick right on the edges of this balcony, but I'm going to actually do it with a slight offset. So I'm going to offset that about 2 inches away, and I'll just click somewhere here in the plan view to make it the active view, and then go ahead and zoom in a little closer. Watch what happens when I highlight this edge. You see how I can either offset the railing this way or this way. So I'm going to offset it this way and then do it again right here. Revit will automatically clean up that intersection. Let's go to the previous zoom level and zoom in down here. I might need to fix this a little. You'll notice that the line went a little too long. So click my modify tool to cancel out of there. Select this line, and then just simply drag the script back. I could snap it right to the wall if I want, or I can back it up off of there a little bit, and I can even use the temporary dimension to say how much I want that distance to be. That can be an open shape, like I said. The only other thing you want to pay attention to is what kind of railing are you creating. There are a few different types here in the file that are loaded already, so I'm going to use this guardrail pipe right there. I'll click the Finish button, Zoom in a little, we'll see the railing right there. There's a variety of ways we could look at this. We could cut a section or do an interior elevation, but actually I'm going to come up here to our 3D view button and click the drop down right next to it. And we can make a camera view. This is just a perspective view. You click where you want to stand, and then you drag towards where you want to look. So I'll kind of look right about there and click again. And Revit will create a camera that looks in at that railing that we just created. So you can see it right there. Looks pretty good, sitting up here on top of the floor slab. So railings get created automatically when you draw a stair. And that's probably the most common way that you'll get a railing in your models. But you can always draw railings for things like guardrails or other standalone railings by just simply sketching out their path. So you just sketch the path in a plan view. It can be an open shape or a closed shape. Then you apply a railing style to it. At the component-based stair. Revit has two kinds of stairs. In the previous movie, we looked at the sketch-based stair. And this time around, we're going to look at the component-based stair. Now, in some ways, the component-based stair is a little bit more robust than the sketch-based stair. And so I'd like to focus on some of those differences between the two. I'm in a file called Component Stairs. And one of the differences that we have between component and sketch-based stair is a component-based stair can be built in 2D or 3D, or you can work in both views simultaneously. So let me demonstrate here. I'm currently in a floor plan level 1, but also in this exercise file, I have a view here called 3D stair section. I'm going to double click and open that up. Zoomed in a little too close there. Let's zoom it out just so you can see. And this is a cropped view of the lobby area that we were looking at in the plan view. Now, I'll talk about how I created this view in the cutaway views in a future chapter, but for right now, we're just going to use the one that's already here in the exercise file. If I go to the View tab, I can tile these two windows, this 3D view and the plan view, together on the screen at the same time. And I can do that here with the Window Tile button, or I can type WT, which is the keyboard shortcut. I'm just going to adjust both of these views so that we can zoom in a little bit and see what we're doing. And we're going to build the stair in this general location. I like to build the stair kind of off to the side first and then move it into position. I typically find that a little bit easier to do. So we're going to go to the Architecture tab, and here in the Circulation panel, click the drop down next to Stairs, and make sure you're choosing Stair by Component. Now, the component-based stair is kind of similar to the sketch-based stair in that we go into this mode and everything sort of grays out. But instead of sketching two-dimensional sketches, you're now really sketching with 3D components. So up here on the ribbon, you can see that we've got a run tool active, and I'm drawing a straight run. I'm going to accept both of those options, but you could do a spiral stair, you could do winder stairs. Those are some additional choices. Over here in the options bar, you have several choices for location line. And I want to show you what a few of these look like. So, run center is probably the most obvious. Let me just click a point here in the middle of the lobby and start to move the mouse. And you can see that that location line is right down the center. But if I zoom in just a little bit and change to either left or right here, notice that the location line shifts out to the outside edge of the run itself, but it's still inside of the support. If you go to either left or right support, then it goes to the outside edge of the support itself. So you could use any one of these location lines in the stairs you're building. In this case, I'm going to go with support left, zoom back out a touch, and I'm going to accept all the other defaults here. 3 foot wide, automatic landing, and I'm going to draw about half of the risers to start with. So it says 9 created, 9 remaining. I'll click a point. Notice that the stair appears immediately in the 3D view as well as the plan view. In addition to that, notice that these two numbers appear here, 1 and 9, indicating for me that that's riser 1 and that's riser 9. So we get a little bit more visual feedback as we're working. Now I'm going to make sure I'm lined up with the first run, click a point, draw over here to the left, and create the rest of the run of stairs. And that'll give me risers 10 through 18. Now let's go ahead and finish that and see what that gives us. So I'm going to click the Finish Edit Mode button here, and we get a warning message generated from Revit. Now, the warning messages that appear here in the lower corner that have this yellow tint to them, you can actually ignore. If I were to just click anywhere on screen, that message would go away. But what the message is telling me is, if I zoom in over here on the 3D view, is it doesn't like the way this railing is turning the corner. The rail there, I don't know if you can see, it's a little disjointed right in that location there. So it's not a continuous railing. Now, there's a few ways you could potentially solve that. One would be to try and modify the railing type itself, but another would be to modify the stair geometry. So in this case, I'm going to actually modify the landing here on the stair to give that railing a little bit more room. So to do that, I'm going to click the stair, choose the Edit Stairs button, and that puts me back into the build mode. I'm going to select my landing, zoom in a touch, and you'll notice that there's these triangle grips that appear around the perimeter of the landing. I can take any of those grips and drag them to reshape the landing. So I'm going to start dragging this one, and I want it to go 1 foot, but you can see I'm having a tough time getting it to snap to that. So that dimension that appears there is bold, and I can actually start to type. And the number that I type will go right into that bold dimension. We call that a listening dimension. So I'm going to just type the number 1, press enter, and this extension right here will be 1 foot. Then I'm going to do it again down here, and this time I want 1'6", and you see that it's snapping to that on its own. So I don't need to type this time, but certainly you could type it in if you choose to. So let's go ahead and click finish on that and see what that gives me. Now notice that this time the warning was not generated and I have a nice continuous railing now. So that takes care of that problem. Now the next thing I want to look at is shaping these stairs a little bit more to my liking. So I'm going to select the stair again and return to the edit stairs. The first thing I want to look at is the distance between the two runs. Right now, they're somewhat random because when I placed it, I didn't really pay attention to how far apart they were. Now you can select the run and you can easily move it. But again, I'm still moving it somewhat randomly, but notice that the other components all adjust. The supports get longer, the landing adjusts. Well, I can use the temporary dimensions that you see on screen here to manipulate it very precisely, or I can even draw my own dimension to move it very precisely. So I'm going to come up here on the ribbon and choose the Align Dimension button. The shortcut for that is DI. And then I'm going to highlight one of the edges of the run. Now I want to look at the tooltip and make sure that it says runs. If I press my tab key, it switches to supports. I don't want supports. So if you see supports on your message, press tab until it says run. And then you click, and then I have the same thing on the other side. I want to make sure it says run, and then I'm going to click, and then I'll place the dimension over here somewhere. Click the modify tool to cancel out. Now when I select either of the runs, this dimension will light up as a temporary dimension, and I can click in there and put in a new value. I'm going to do 0 space 8, or you can type 8 inches, and that's going to pull those much closer together to make them 8 inches apart. Now the other modification that I want is I want these two runs to be unequal. Let's look at a couple more grip controls that we have on the runs themselves. So I'm going to select the first run here, the upper one, and look here at the very end, you'll see two small grip points. There's a triangle-shaped one and a round-shaped one. Now, if you drag the round-shaped one, notice that that actually had the effect of removing risers from the stair, and this number confirms that by starting now at number 3. Risers 1 and 2 haven't been placed yet, and the stair is kind of floating up in the air. So I'm going to undo that with Control Z. If I click the run again and use the triangle this time, if I were to drag to the right, you'll see the risers that I'm removing get added to the other run. If I were to drag to the left, you'll see the risers that I'm adding get taken away from the other run. So I'm going to drag to the left and add 2 risers, and notice that this run here shortens as a consequence. Furthermore, the landing actually had to come and raise up higher in order to accommodate that change. So this is one of the benefits of the component-based stair, is that all the parts and pieces are connected together. And if you start making manipulations to one of the pieces, it will often have an impact on the others. So let's deselect that, click the Finish Edit mode, and see what that gives us. You can now see that I've got a nice long run here, and then a landing, and then a shorter run. The only thing that I still need to do is, if I zoom out here, I want to actually enter the stair here and wrap around to here, because up here in the floor plan where I'm going to place it, the balcony is closer to the wall. I don't have to build the stair all over again. it turns out that if you click on it, there's this small little grip right here that will flip the direction of the stair. And if I just click that, you're going to see the whole thing reverse. And now we're starting with a short run, going to a landing, and then it goes up the long run. And notice the landing adjusted accordingly. So the final step is to put the stair in location where it needs to be. To do that, I need a guideline over here. So I'm going to make sure that nothing is selected. Over here in the properties palette, I'm going to scroll down and turn on the underlay for level 2. I'm going to use the reflected ceiling plan orientation, and a small gray line will appear right there. All I need to do now is select the stair, go to my move tool, snap to an endpoint here, and snap to another endpoint right there. The stair fits nicely into that location. Let's take a look at it in both views. Hold the shift key down and do a little bit of orbiting here, and zoom in and take a look at it over here. So that completes our component base stair. And as you can see, there's a lot of similarities to the sketch base stair, but there's also a lot of distinct advantages to the component base stair as well. Chief among them being that if you manipulate one of the components, all of the other components will react in kind and manipulate accordingly. Rails can have automatically generated extensions. Those extensions will allow us to build in code requirements, such as the distance of an extension that's required by the building code, or adding a tread depth, and so on to the extensions of our railings, and have it take place automatically when we draw them. So I'm in a file here called railing extensions, and I'm going to zoom in down here at the bottom. And I've got two different railings here. And so to set us up, what I want to do is actually build two different railing styles so that we can do one that does returning back to the post of the railing, and we'll do another example with the other one that returns to the wall. I'm going to select this railing right here and go to Edit Type and duplicate it, and I'll call this one Handrail Pipe, and I'll just add the word post at the end. Click OK. Then I'm going to select this one, go to Edit Type, duplicate it, and I'll add the word wall at the end. Normally that would be enough, and we could modify both of these railings and each one would behave a little differently. But if you look at either one of these and edit the type, they both reference the same top rail object. So right here it says top rail and type, and it says circular 1.5 inch. And if I select this one and I go to edit type, it also says circular 1.5 inch. So what I want to do is I actually want to build a copy of that type that I can use two different sets of settings on. I'm going to do that on the project browser. So if we scroll down here, looking under families, we're going to expand that. And then under families, we're going to look for the railing category and expand that. And what you'll see here is a handrail type and a top rail type. For these two railings, that's the top rail that we're talking about, and here's the circular 1.5 inch type. I'm going to right click that and choose duplicate. That creates 1.5 inch 2. I'm going to right click that and choose rename, and I'm going to rename it post extension. That's the one that I'm going to use over here on this railing. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to scroll up a little bit and notice that the handrail type also has a type called circular 1.5 inch. This can be a little confusing because they both have the same name and you may get confused as to which one you're editing. I'm going to duplicate this one as well and right click the duplicate and rename it, and I'm going to call this wall extension. These may not be the best names, but they'll serve our purposes because it'll clarify which one we're working on. If I come over here and I select this railing, edit its type again, I can now change the top rail that's being used here to use the post extension. Notice that that's now available on the list. Let me clarify. Wall extension is not on the list because wall extension is not a top rail. It's a handrail. So if we added a handrail to this type, there's where wall extension would be. Once I've got that, I'm going to click OK. And it's an awful lot of setup, but nothing's actually happened yet. So now we're finally ready to actually turn on the extension, and it's actually fairly easy to do. Let me deselect the thing, hover over the top rail of this railing, press the tab key, and notice that it will highlight that top rail. I'm going to click it to select it. Notice over here it says that's post extension, but it's grayed out. But I have access to the edit type button. So I'm going to click that, and now we can change the settings of the post extension. I want to choose what kind of extension style I want this to have. I can do a different one at the beginning or bottom, and another one at the end or top. So here at the beginning or bottom, because we're at the bottom of the stair, I'm going to choose a post extension. I'm going to give it a distance. That's not enough. If I just click apply on that, nothing will happen. Because all I'm telling it is I want to post extension, but I haven't told it how far to extend. Maybe I want to extend by 1 foot. So I'm going to click apply. And you'll see it extend out 1 foot and then return back to the post. That's what they mean by a post extension. If I check this box, then it will project out even further because it will add a tread depth to the extension. So it's a tread depth plus 1 foot, and then finally it returns back. If you wanted to, you could even do a floor extension. And when I click apply, now it'll return down to the floor instead of back to the post. Now I'm not going to show you the wall extension here. I'll show you that on the other railing. Choose whichever one you want here. I'll go ahead and set this back to post. Click OK, and that completes that one. So now we want to do something similar over here, but we have one more bit of setup to do on this railing. I'm going to do the wall extension with a handrail instead of a top rail. So I need to edit this type. Now remember, we previously renamed it to handrail pipe wall. So I need to edit that type. And let's move this box over here and make this slightly narrower so we can see. Down here for handrail 1, under the type, I'm going to choose the wall extension. Remember, that's the name we just gave it down on the project browser. And where do I want it positioned? This is important because if you just say wall extension, nothing happens because you've told it what type you want to use, but you haven't told it where to put it. If I open up this list here, we've got a few choices. It can be on the left, the right, or the center. I'm a firm believer in the 50-50 rule. I don't have any idea if it's left or right. I'm going to take a guess. Choose left. Click apply. I got a 50% chance of being correct. If I'm wrong, I know exactly what it should be now. I'll just change it to the other one. If you don't have 50-50 odds, I might be a little more scientific about it. Anyhow, we've got it on the left. It created it here on the inside. We're using wall extension. That's as much as we can do in the railing style. But now I click OK, deselect it, and again I have to tab in and select the handrail. Go to edit type. That's the wall extension I'm editing now. You can see it back there in the background. And now it's the same kind of settings that we did on the other one over here. This time, I will choose the wall option. Put in a number, click apply. It extends out 1 foot and returns back to the wall. If I add a tread depth, just extends out a little bit longer and returns back to the wall. As you can see, the railing extension feature is a little complex, but once it's set up, it's a pretty powerful feature that allows us to build in the automatic parameters to control whatever our code requirements tell us we need for an extension at the bottom of our railings.